I can remember sitting on my neighbor's living room floor and playing pole position for the Atari 2600 for the very first time. The idea that you had video games playing on your home television set was so astounding that you never questioned the graphics or the gameplay or the sound. Ignorance was bliss, and being ignorant meant Atari 2600 was cutting-edge technology. Christmas morning, 1983, and underneath the tree, my very own ColecoVision. Was I concerned about the characteristics of the games? Hell no, I had my very own video game console that I could play anytime I wanted to. I couldn't have been happier. I played games like Pit Stop and Bump and Jump. The world was my oyster. Then along came the Nintendo Entertainment System, and with it came groundbreaking graphics and a depth of gameplay in which we've never seen before. Games like Super Mario Bros. And Legend of Zelda provided hours of entertainment. Games all of a sudden had innovative musical scores, and the new controller was such a huge relief from controllers of the past. Nintendo really raised the bar, but something was missing. So here we go, the 16-bit age. Now what's a bit? I have no idea. But I know 16 is twice as much as 8, so that must mean twice as much video game goodness. Now, the big difference here is Mommy and Daddy weren't shelling out the money for this video game system. This one was coming straight out of my pocket. So now that I'm paying for it, my expectations are high, and this better be good. Systems like the Super Nintendo, the Sega Genesis, and the TurboGrafx 16 promise you things like blast processing and Mode 7 scaling, high-speed, colorful graphics. Surely these game systems would overcome all the shortcomings of their ancestors. And they did, except in this one aspect. This is it. We're nearing the end of my retro video gaming career. We have systems like the PlayStation, the Nintendo 64, the Jaguar, the 3DO, the Sega Dreamcast. We're talking about 32-bit, 64-bit systems, full multimedia capabilities, 3D rendering, live voice acting, and full motion video. With all this technology, space-age technology, they still couldn't solve this relatively simple problem that's plagued gaming since the very start. Okay, so by now you're probably saying to yourself, Bithead 1000, you're boring us to death. What are you driving at? Driving. So let's hop in Bithead 1000's time machine. It's no DeLorean. It's more like a it's more like a trash can spinning really fast. All right, enough of that. Let's go back to 29 years to 1983 and revisit pole position for the Atari 2600. Now pay very close attention to the sound of this Formula One car's engine. Let's move ahead 16 years to 1999 and the midway release of World Drivers Championship for the Nintendo 64. Again, pay attention to the sound of the engine on the car. Are you kidding me? Where is the outcry in the retro video gaming community? Am I the only one that hears this? This is my biggest pet peeve in retro video gaming. And I've never heard anybody talk about it. Don't you people have ears? Can you believe over the course of 16 years the evolution that video games have made since the Atari 2600, the leaps in graphics, in every aspect of video gaming? And pole position sounds better than a game from 1999? Where's the outcry? So let's examine the evolution of, I can't even say evolution, the limbo, I call it the limbo-lution, because it hasn't gone anywhere. There has been no progression in it. Let's examine the limbo-lution of engine sounds on cars and video games from the Atari all the way up through the Nintendo 64. It didn't take much to create these engine sound effects. Well, hell, if I had an old suitcase or a cup of mouthwash, I could probably make them myself. Okay. I know what you're saying. Bidhead, that's the beginning, that's, the fundamentals, that's the foundation of video gaming right there. Okay, fair enough. Let's move on to the 8-bit age, the Nintendo age, where surely we've left sounds like this far in the past.
Drivers, start your engine!
Did I hear that right? What does this guy use, dynamite to start his car? Hold on.
Drivers, start your engine!
moving along, let's take a look at what I consider to be the golden age of video gaming, the 16-bit era. With games like Earthworm Jim, the Sega Genesis was clearly able to produce some excellent sounds. With sounds like that, a race car engine should be a snap. Alright, let's take a look at Jaguar XJ220 for the Sega CD. It has to be better than this. Ah, jeez. Well, if I know anything in this world, I know my TurboGrafx isn't gonna let me down. Oh man, this is so frustrating. Even my TurboGrafx 16 let me down. Let's move on to the Super Nintendo. The one thing I can remember about the Super Nintendo is the first time I played it, being blown away by the sound. This had sound like no other gaming system I had ever played in the past. I'm positive now that the Super Nintendo was able to work out all the kinks when it came to car sounds. So when it comes to sound, I could almost understand the shortcomings of the 16-bit era. After all, 95% of the 16-bit era was on a cartridge, and cartridges are kind of mysterious. Who knows the type of programming it takes, to reproduce sound? But now we're moving into the Sega Saturn, the PlayStation, the Nintendo 64, which was still on cartridge, but it was just like magical how they were able to reproduce the sound of human voice. So really, they don't have any excuse either. So here we are in an era where we're basically on disc now, the Sega Dreamcast. Why can't you just record the sound and use it as a sample on the disc in the game? This is where game developers got very clever. They said, we're going to take our aged and recycled and boring sound effects and we're going to smother them with techno music. And this must have been successful because every gaming system of the time used this technique. But if you have a trained ear and you listen carefully, you can still hear how awful the car sounds are.
Ready. Go!
Give it everything you've got! Sharp right turn. Sharp left turn. Don't give up yet. Go on, pass them all.
I have to admit, the technique works well. I mean, you could even apply it to other games.
Roaring Star! Roaring Star!
But if we could get serious for just a second, I want you to think about this. What's the most important part of a video game? Probably the gameplay. And then second to that, for me, is the sound. Graphics, I think the imagination can kind of fill in the blank when it comes into deficiencies in a game's graphics. But sound is so immersive, and it adds so much realism to the game, and it's just pleasant to the ears. And I mean, what's more powerful than the sound of a car's engine? I mean, every man, if you're any type of man in any type of capacity whatsoever, loves the sound of an engine, and a race car engine. And I think that if games of the past had those visceral engine sounds, they'd be a lot more exciting. So that's it. I'm Bithead1000. That's what I hate about retro racing video games. And you've just tuned in to the greatest video game program in the history of human civilization. And I'll see you guys next time.